You're listening to a podcast from The Word.
I've got a question for you, Mark. Let's imagine that you bought a ticket to see some old favourite legendary name, goes back to the 70s and even the 60s. Let's just imagine it's, I don't know, pluck a name at random. Jeff Beck. Okay? And you go along to see Jeff Beck.
Thin air, yeah.
And presumably you get a bit of, I don't know, you probably get an old Yardbirds tune. You won't get Hi-Ho Silver Lining, but you probably get something from, you might get something from Jeff Beck's seminal, let's use that adjective, seminal album, Truth.
And you want technique, don't you? You want precision.
Yeah, well, you're going to get that you're going to get that when he goes into the tunes from Blow by Blow or Wired or any of his other early 70s hits. Okay, and let's say you're enjoying this feast of instrumental pyrotechnics and accuracy and precision and so forth. And then on Lumbers.
Lumbers is the word.
Some clown who looks as if he's won a kind of dressed
Keith
like
Richards.
Keith Richards competition. He looks as if he's come second in trying to get the Nick Kent part in Pistol, of which more later. And proceeds to, there is no other word for it but jam.
There'll be jam.
Yeah. And you are identified as Johnny Depp. Recently named somewhat blackened in the High Court in
highly controversial
in England, and then entirely exonerated in the courts of the United States. I do not know. I don't claim to know the rights or wrongs.
Possibly fathom that one.
but all I want to know is, how do you feel?
I feel surely massively hacked off. Wouldn't you? I mean, really, really. I mean, genuinely cross.
Yes.
Because it's completely the antithesis of what Jeff Beck does. Jeff Beck's not, I mean, in principle, it's wrong anyway, but Jeff Beck isn't that kind of guy. It's precision, isn't it? Technique, it's kind of detail, and it's, it's all terribly highly wrought, and it's virtuosity. Virtuosity is the key thing. Now, Johnny Depp, I mean, don't get me wrong. I clearly he can play a few major chords, but virtuosity, I think not.
No.
Johnny Depp's one of those guys. He formed a band called the Hollywood Vampires with Alice Cooper and Joe Perry, didn't he, a while ago, about 10 years ago. And you can imagine that's just a classic example of kind of rock star fantasy, isn't it? It's actors who fancy themselves on stage as a rock star, and all you do is buy a bottle of Jack Daniels and put a couple of fancy neck scarves on, and you're away, But also, I think there's a problem that, I mean, it's like, would you be thrilled if Jeff Beck turned up in, the next Pirates of the Caribbean? No.
No, not if given a difficult part. I don't think so.
No, but I think we have a slight problem with actors as musicians anyway, I think. I mean, I've seen bits of footage of Kevin Bacon's group, the Bacon Brothers, and they're actually pretty good. But your problem is it's Kevin Bacon. You can't make that leap from the idea that it's Kevin Bacon sort of acting the part of a musician. I speak as somebody who was at Glastonbury years ago and saw Dog Star, who are Keanu Reeves' band. Got a huge crowd, early afternoon. Of course they did, because it's Keanu Reeves. And no matter how good or bad or indifferent they were, it just looked like Keanu Reeves playing the part of a kind of grunge bassist, throwing himself around the stage, all the right shapes, bit of backing vocal and all that. And you couldn't accept that he was somehow doing something different from just being Keanu Reeves. So I think we got a problem with that.
Can I introduce another element in that?
Yeah.
Because if I'm a Jeff Beck fan from, where's he played? He's played in Newcastle, hasn't he? Probably played in Sheffield, I think, as well. So if I'm a Jeff Beck fan living in either of those places, I presumably bought my ticket maybe pre-pandemic. Is perfectly possible, isn't it? I may have, bought the ticket ages ago, and and I've no doubt, gone through 2-year period during which work acquaintances and neighbours have said, have you got anything to look forward to at the end of the pandemic? And you've said, yeah, I'm going to see Jeff Beck. And they have said, who? Because Jeff Beck might be a household name to you and me. It's not to most people down my road, Anyway, suddenly when you get to the thing, the whole... That whole pure experience of your kind of fandom has been hijacked by this person, from the front pages. Suddenly, coming on stage to, I don't know, it's to rockwash his reputation. I think
rockwash.
I think
that's very funny.
Well, this is what they call it. When a dodgy kind of Middle Eastern state buys a football club, pick a name at random, Manchester City. It's a means of sports washing their image on the world stage.
Yeah, it is.
Well, Johnny Depp is rock washing his reputation by standing in the spotlight of
you could imagine the winner in this, possibly, if there is a winner, is Jeff Beck, because Jeff Beck, of course, has been in all the newspapers and all the media outlets, and would not normally have been so. Jeff Beck playing a gig in Newcastle is not big news.
It's not news.
But in every single international coverage of the Johnny Depp Amber Heard court case, what was Magic Alex's gag? He's got herd immunity. I know, and they've all mentioned the fact that he's playing at Jeff Beck's concert. So in that respect, pretty good. But I think we have problems with it. And I think we have problems also with rock stars the other way around, with rock stars as actors. I mean, how many times have you been convinced by a rock star on stage or on screen? Tom Waits?
Twice.
But Tom Waits, fine, because Tom Waits is playing Tom Waits.
I'll tell you.
I think only once in my case. Go on, who are yours?
Well, not quite a rock star. Well, okay, one a rock star, another a music star. Oddly enough, the two most convincing musical stars as actors or as screen presences were Frank Sinatra.
Yeah, he was really good.
He was really
good. Yeah.
And controversial mark, Elvis Presley. Elvis Presley.
Oh, you think so?
Yes, because Elvis Presley in front of camera, you just wanted to look at him. He never looked out of his depth at all.
No, he didn't look uneasy. He didn't look self-conscious. No, absolutely true.
No. Whereas, David Bowie, appallingly self-conscious.
Roger Daltrey, I know, just a little bit agonising. No, the one I would suggest is Lady Gaga. You ever seen Born?
I have not. No.
Oh, my Lord, she's fantastic in that. Completely convincing. But no, Jeff Beck, and Johnny Depp, a bad thing. We've agreed.
The Word Podcast, prime cuts of popular culture served fresh each week.
Before we go any further, however you're watching or listening to or in any way receiving this, any kind of feedback or subscription or ticking the box or thumbs up or whatever is deeply appreciated, isn't it, Mark? We really do appreciate, because it does make a difference, that kind of thing.
It does.
And so if you're watching this on YouTube or, however, there's probably some way that you can demonstrate some kind of approbation by ticking something or whatever. If so, do it now while we wait.
It gives us a warm glow.
Oh, I'm feeling better already, Mark. I'm feeling better already. I'm so
Thank
pleased.
you so much.
So pleased you did
That's
that.
made my day.
Okay, right. So carry on. Back to the show.
Back to the show. I think we must mention actually, R.I.P. the great Ronnie Hawkins, a man that I remember Grail Marcus once described. He said he knew more back roads, more back rooms, and more back sides than any man from Newark to Mexicali. And he's kind of the original, a really outrageous old kind of original road hog, wasn't he? And also connection with a kind of American kind of roots music. I mean, even when he was 50, he was born in 1935. So when he was 15, around 1950, he was playing in various bands, playing old Cab Calloway, jazz, blues. So he's that extraordinary connection back to America, but pre-rock and roll. And also, as a teenager, running bootleg liquor from Missouri to Oklahoma in a Model A Ford for $300 a day. I mean, this is not the life of Radiohead, is it?
No, that's good. That's good. That's good money.
That's a lot of money. My God, that's a lot of money. I know.
Whatever happened to those jobs?
Yeah.
Do you know what else? Because he came from Arkansas, didn't he? And he came from quite a comfortable background, really. Yeah. Because he went to university, which is not something that he went on about very much.
Funny enough, he didn't mention that, did he?
He didn't mention that. But he had an early, but you know what one of his early jobs was? He was, and this has to be unique in the whole rich history of popular music. He had an early job as a stunt diver in an Esther Williams pageant. Esther Williams being the big star, who was well-known star swimmer of Hollywood movies.
Oh, yeah, I know her. Yeah.
That kind of water pageants.
Yeah.
And so the young Ronnie Hawkins, at the age of about 16, was presumably a really good swimmer. And no doubt, plunged off high towers into buckets of water or something underneath. I was very taken with that. But he made his career, oddly enough, in Canada, didn't he? Really?
Yeah, he did.
Because he just decided too much competition in the United States.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to go up there.
I thought he was Canadian. And in fact, Levon Helm was from Arkansas as well, wasn't he? But
yes, he was, of course. Yes, that's the connection. Yeah, so he goes to Toronto and kind of starts again there, doesn't he? With I don't know if Levon had gone there first. I'm not sure. But
quite conventional things. He did early singles, "Summertime" and "Bluebirds Over the Mountain." It's quite kind of traditional stuff, and then suddenly got into being a rock and roller, didn't he? And you can't help but think that there would have been no band's first and second album with that variety of American kind of roots music had they not worked with him and soaked up everything.
No, possibly.
Really extraordinary.
So his first big hit single was 30 Days, the Chuck Berry song. Do you know what his second big hit single was?
Go on.
40 Days. Which is the same song, but basically instead of singing, I'm going to give you 30 days to get back home. Its follow-up says, I'm going to give you 40 days to get back home.
You got an extension.
Which talk about not wishing to, everybody with a follow-up always wants something that's like the hit.
Absolutely.
Well, that is
not trying to disguise it there.
Absolutely.
It's so great.
So he recruited the members of the band when they were kind of teenagers, didn't he? In the early 60s. And famously, as Robbie Robertson or somebody, or one of them, quotes on the soundtrack of, during an interview in The Last Waltz, when he hired them, he said, "You won't get much money, but you will get more pussy than Frank Sinatra."
Which obviously worked for them. Yeah, Rick Danko, very happy.
It's a strong sales line with any bunch of kind of 18-year-olds in a band, and not used anything like as much as it ought to be, really.
No. But I like the fact they always said he was so out of touch that he was just in this kind of bubble, wasn't he? Where he was just the kind of music that he played was all he was interested in. And they said that they remember him listening to a Neil Young album, fellow Canadian. Well, not that he was Canadian, but we thought he was a Canadian. And how horrified he was by the sound of Neil Young. He said he was, and he just couldn't understand what Neil Young was doing. The whole thing was kind of new to him and rather overpowering. And he became quite good mates with John Lennon at one point, although admitted that he'd never really sat down, never listened to a Beatles record. I mean, he just operated in a complete kind of in a complete kind of cocoon. Really interesting.
So now that Ronnie Hawkins is gone, how many of the original, let's say, the original rock and rollers are left? I'm going to tell you the answer, Mark.
Well, is Chuck Berry still with us? I can't remember.
No.
He's not, is he? No.
Chuck been dead quite a few years.
Yeah.
Now. There is only one. And that is the one who, if there was any justice in this world,
it's not Jerry Lee Lewis.
would have shuffled off this MC many years ago. No. It's Jerry Lee Lewis.
He's still with us.
He's somehow hanging on. My God.
How old would he be? I mean, that's phenomenal. He's not. I mean, does he ever play? No.
I don't think he does nowadays. No. but it's
that's outrageous, isn't it?
It's
like the idea that the one who'll survive them all is going to be Keith Richards.
Yes.
That it's a sort of terrible irony, really, isn't it?
Yeah. If there were any justice, Jerry Lee would have left the building some while ago. But he's still there. So who are we to argue?
This is a junction in the word podcast. It separates that bit from this next bit.
So in notes, Mark, in an announcement that is, as you can imagine, caused me great personal pain, that Kiss are handing in their lunch pail.
That's right. Handing in their mascara, their eyebrow pencils.
They are retiring at the end of their current stint.
Yeah, because
they say they're doing it out of self-respect. It's quite interesting, and the love for their fans. And I may be a sarky old bastard. I think that's fair enough. Actually.
I think it's fair enough too. Actually,
it's quite fair enough. And they're obviously aware of the fact that. Getting around on stage is not quite as easy as it used to be. Not quite as limber as they would have been in their salad days. And of course, they've had that inbuilt advantage for many years that they are behind a mask of makeup, and therefore you can't see the wear and tear, can you?
No, which is so normally it's a gradual process, isn't it? We've talked about this before that a lot of that equation when you go and see some group that you've loved for years is that initial moment when they come on, isn't it? And you have to weigh up whether or not you're going to accept what time has done to them, and are you going to kind of believe it? And there are certain people, I think, where it became difficult. Peter Gabriel was one. I think Peter Gabriel looks so different. Morrissey, I think currently, not that he plays much now, it's another one. You look at Morrissey and think, can I accept that is Morrissey? It just seems somehow different and somehow...
Morrissey is an essentially thin concept.
Yeah, and he's essentially a young concept, and a middle-aged Morrissey doesn't seem quite right somehow.
He looks like Albert Finney nowadays.
Yes, he does. He does. No, so you have to weigh that up. And so in that respect, it's interesting that you haven't seen them gradually age, and they've probably gone on much longer than they maybe could have done, actually. But I remember the disconcerting experience of going to see Nick Lowe playing with a group called the Lost Straitjackets.
Oh, yeah.
American instrumental group. They were amazing. And they play with masks, and you get a sort of impression of what they are and what they sound like. And then we went to meet them all afterwards, and there they were without their masks, and that was really disconcerting, actually.
Really?
I don't know why. Just they were so much older and more different.
They're retired gentlemen, aren't
they? They're retired gentlemen. You just kind of had them as kind of ageless, and So it's an odd experience. I suppose Slipknot could go on forever, couldn't they? Slipknot could go on forever and have new members, and you'd never know nor care.
No, you never know. One tangent on the Kiss story. I was reading a little interview with Gene Simmons, talking about how he stays fit and how it's important to stay fit. It takes it out of you, the kind of performing life. And he used an expression that it strikes me only Americans use. I'll say probably only Californian Americans use. They say he keeps fit by hiking 3 miles every day. Hiking. The Americans talk about hiking when they do what you or I would describe as, what's the word, Mark?
Walking. So he hikes to the shops. Does that mean he puts on kind of, knee-length socks? Pair of sturdy lace-up boots. I don't know. Probably has a cleft stick.
He's got a map.
And some crampons and pitons in case he has to abseil down the side of the
He's got a piece of Kendall mint cake.
A compass.
In his backpack.
Bivouac.
For God's sake, Californians, pull yourself together. Hiking is a totally different thing. It's just walking. It's having a nice walk. And of course, I suppose it's a big thing in California because they've got rid of all the pavements, haven't they? That was the first thing that shocked me about Hollywood when I first went there, is you literally couldn't walk anywhere because there were no pavements.
No, exactly. You have to drive. There's no way around it.
Yeah, it's It's a society entirely made for affluent people. And so the only place where they go walking is they go out in the country. Hence, they use the expression hiking. Anyway, so that's Kiss. They're retiring out of self-respect and
maybe
love
many
for
other
their
people
fans.
should have done this as well at some stage.
So you've been getting into Pistol.
Well, I have. I've seen 5 episodes. I thought it was quite good, actually. I mean, you weren't that keen. We talked about it a bit last week. I mean, it is corny. It's unbelievably corny. And we talked about that whole thing that in biopics you have to introduce straight away who the characters are, because otherwise you might not know. Honestly, Dave, it gets more and more ludicrous. There's a bit where they play their first gig, and somebody comes up, a journalist with a notebook, kind of a notepad.
Oh, the journalists always do that.
He says, Neil Spencer from the NME. Yeah, she says, hello.
No.
Yeah, she says, hello, Neil Spencer.
No.
So that kind of idea, the outstretched hand is the other bit. There's a bit where they're looking for a new record deal. They've been booted off EMI and booted off A&M. And they go to a houseboat on the canal in North London. And a man with a beard, a comfy sweater, holds out his hand. He says, Branson, Richard Branson, to make it absolutely clear, you know. And it is so corny. It's an unbelievable scene when they play in a kind of posh hotel. And there's a girl who works in the hotel who's quite conventional, you know, and she's got all her kind of the hotel gear on, you know. And she's so overcome by the sound of the band that she goes into the loo, kind of cuts her hair, puts on sort of Susie of the Banshees makeup, and comes out and dances on the dance floor as if somehow punk would convert people instantly. So it is kind of, and Malcolm, all that kind of philosophizing, and kind of, you know, the whole idea is I'm theorizing, I'm orchestrating the whole thing. It's ridiculous. But, you know, I think some of the people were really good. The girl who plays Chrissy Hines, Sydney Chandler, is terrific. All the girls are terrific, actually. And also it struck me that actually it is a very unusual story, because in under 2 years, the Pistols, and it's not about records, it's entirely about the controversy, had so many extraordinary things happen. There was the whole stuff about the audience horror at their first gigs. There was the signing to A&M in front of Buckingham Palace. You know, there's the HMS Belfast scene and the arrest, and Bill Grundy, God Save the Queen, hiring Sid Vicious, a bloke. I mean, I can remember all this really well because it was just around the time I was about to start working on the NME, hiring Sid Vicious, a bloke who patently couldn't play. The US tour. Do you remember that, when Malcolm sent them down to face the redneck South? Ronnie Biggs, and then the death of Sid and Nancy. I mean, they are amazing. I couldn't really think of any other group who, in that brief period of time, it was only about 18 months, had crammed in so much controversy. But the thing I found, go on, yeah.
No, nothing's been as fast since, has it?
No, not really. No, I mean, obviously, all big groups had big news stories, but they weren't of that kind of nature. They were mostly about statistical things, about chart successes and playing huge size venues or whatever. Theirs was all wall-to-wall controversy. Amazing. But the thing that the group makes you think about is that they're so utterly horrible to each other the entire time. And you think, how would they have had enough belief in the common cause to put up with that? And I thought it was quite interesting that once you see the story of the Pistols from Steve Jones' point of view, because the film's based on his book, you kind of have some insight into it, because he came from this really, really, really horrible background, didn't he? Kind of abused by his stepfather, and kind of absolutely joyless, miserable life. He had 14 criminal convictions. He had a year in a remand home. And there's a bit in the movie, and I don't know whether it happened in real life, but you can see there was a connection where Malcolm goes to testify on his behalf in court and gets him out of jail. So once Malcolm has said, I'm going to give you a chance, I'm going to be this kind of father figure you never had, you can understand why he would have pursued, what he would have believed in everything that Malcolm told him to do, and why they would have had the appetite, also being broke and working class, desperately keen to make the amounts of money they did, you know. And I could sort of understand why they had that kind of drive to succeed, why that overcome they overcame all the internal misery. But the other thing I thought was amazing was Glenn Matlock. Glenn Matlock, what a saint, this character. He comes out of this thing as completely saintly. Not only really sweet-natured, clearly the best songwriter, clearly the best musician, not that mattered particularly, and then fired in the most horrible circumstances. And according to the movie, he then offers to give Sid Vicious bass lessons before that, which Sid Vicious tells him to fuck off. So you kind of think he comes out of it as being completely wonderful. And I think the whole I thought it's good. I think it's really enjoyable, and it's interesting. I've noticed that the general feeling is everyone thought they were going to hate it, and they've just kind of they've found it's actually thoroughly entertaining. It's good.
The word podcast. Clearly, there is no plan.
Any other business? We're joined by Alex Gold. Where are you, Alex? You're in Kingston, aren't you?
I'm in swinging Kingston-on-Thames in the most harrowing Travelodge I think I've ever had the pleasure to stay in.
It's the Bates Motel goes Travelodge. Yes,
it's astonishing. My recollection of Kingston from being here a few years ago is very idyllic. It's by the river, it's kind of golden suburbia, but some things happened in the intervening years. Maybe because I left in the first place. Who knows? And
you've upset the delicate balance of the universe, Alex.
Then again, no disrespect, but when you see anything from the inside of a Travelodge, doesn't that somehow taint the view?
No. I don't get me wrong. I love a loge. I'm a massive loge fan. Yeah. It's
do you prefer the loge to the Premier Inn?
Oh yeah, I do.
Oh, really?
No, don't get me wrong. I like the fact the Premier Inn's got a guaranteed bath. That's definitely earns it points. However, I find the shade of purple it dresses itself in a little bit stressful. I much prefer the Travelodge's soft blues. And in fact, they've just introduced these sleep rooms. I'm not working for them, by the way, which you pay like £10 extra and you get a slightly comfier bed, a slightly nicer chair.
What are they called? Sleep rooms?
Super rooms.
Oh, super rooms.
Yeah, like a proper coffee machine. Needless to say, there's not one here at all. There's not anything here at all, really, apart from the very heady whiff of failure and discontent.
So that's where you
are.
Overpowering
stench. Yes. Oh my Lord.
So Alex, I asked you. I don't know if you managed to do this. I said we ought to have a subdivision of our Word in Your Attic. All our hundreds of videos.
I've done it actually.
Where we talked to loads and loads of people over the last 2 years. I thought we ought to have an honours board for those people.
Who are the ones that we've done?
Who are the ones who
I think there's Sir Bob Geldof, isn't there?
Yeah.
There's Sir Tim Rice, and now obviously Sir Ian Rankin, which is great. But I think in terms of MBEs, we've done Dylan Jones as an MBE, but were there any others? I don't know.
Yep. Was that 4 altogether? There's 4 so far.
Yeah. Okay.
Well,
congratulations to all of them, and
absolutely.
Ian's got his knighthood, which forces me to ask the question. It's completely theoretical. If you were offered one, Mark Ellen, would you take it?
What a knighthood! I think I'm probably absolutely absurd concept. I'm trying to think what for services to what. I don't know. I think you see, most people say, "Well, I do it for the sake of the family."
Just give me a direct answer, Mark. Would you do it, or would you?
I would. I think because why wouldn't you?
So you wouldn't.
But I wouldn't want to be referred to as whatever. It's like seeing all the stuff in the papers today about the previous politicians at the church service yesterday, and it was kind of it's Gordon Brown and it's Sir Tony Blair. Sir John Major, you know what I mean? Theresa May. I mean,
there are certain people. I was thinking this the other day when I was writing something about Paul McCartney, and then on the email it was referred to as Sir Paul McCartney, and I always think to myself, the idea of giving Paul McCartney a knighthood just seems utterly redundant. He's bloody Paul McCartney.
He's from I know the idea should be aesthetically great.
Yes, it's utterly pointless.
There was a great clip of Robert Smith.
There are only 4 people that applied to. That is the greatest honour of our lifetime, isn't it? It doesn't need recognising with anything further. I feel a bit similar about prime ministers, really. If you've been prime minister, you've risen to the top of your particular tree. However you've done it, that's what you've done. You sort of don't need anything further. It's like
but it's all about people's involvement with charity, isn't it? Which is, what you could probably say about Justin Hayward and Bonnie Tyler. No, Bonnie Tyler and Justin Hayward who got honours.
Okay, can I tell you the other thing about it? Bonnie Tyler and it's people who represent certain parts of the United Kingdom. That's always a good thing. No doubt they're looking for 10 Scots, 10 Welsh.
10 Welsh, tick them off. Absolutely.
Yeah, tick them off. But anyway, there's two things I thought about if I was offered a knighthood, which is clearly never going to happen. One thing, the one thing that would have weighed most heavily in my decision is no longer the factor, is that my parents are no longer alive.
I know.
And if your parents are alive, you couldn't refuse.
You couldn't refuse it. No.
Because they would eventually get to know that you'd refused.
Yeah, and
they would feel slighted. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
You've given me, you've told me that you once got the greatest, I once almost had the greatest reason to show off in front of my people down the shopping centre, and you took it away from me. Parents do not forgive that kind of thing. The other thing is, my first thought would be, is Mark Ellen getting one as well?
Sincerely, I hope he doesn't get one first. But I mean, you could.
My other thought would be, are you sure you don't mean Mark Ellen?
Yeah. I mean, how would you turn down the chance of eventually going? Wouldn't it be such fun to be there? Anybody who's ever been always has a great story to tell about the whole process of how you the conversation that you have with the Queen or whichever dignitary it is, and how you mustn't attempt to continue it. And whether or not they say, "Have you come far?" and all that, it's gripping. Don't you think?
Yeah, can I ask a question which might be construed as a bit stupid? In that, does knighthood get you any sort of tangible benefits? Does it get you like 10% extra off?
10% off at a Travelodge.
Yeah. Or
I think you probably get a restaurant table more easily.
Okay.
I wouldn't be surprised. Your secretary rings up on behalf of Sir Ian Rankin.
Do you get like an extra 5% off the bill as well, or a free dessert?
I don't think it'll get you a percentage off the bill, but I
refill
think
of coffee.
It might get you a restaurant table.
Okay.
And I don't know, a Wimbledon ticket, possibly, that kind of thing.
I'd accept for Wimbledon ticket and a restaurant table, to be quite frank with you.
Yeah. But I do think it's kind of pointless with Paul McCartney. It's
completely pointless. It's absurd. It's almost insulting.
Talking of Paul McCartney, June the 18th, we are marking his 80th birthday in Holland Park in the salubrious auditorium provided by Opera Holland Park, which has the unique virtues of a tinted roof that keeps any potential rain off, because it's not going to rain, but also it's open at the sides, so it can let the sunlight and the air in, can't it?
It's
absolutely lovely.
It's the most wonderful park as well.
Yeah.
Fox wandering around, gorgeous old architecture, lovely flowers, and it's just the whole thing's ace, isn't it?
Yeah, and so that's the 18th, June the 18th, in the afternoon, starts around 2, and it'll be all over by 5. Our guests that afternoon include Danny Baker, Julia Rayside, Jeff Lloyd,
great Graham Gouldman of the 10cc,
and Andy Miller. So they're all going to be joining us. And so if you haven't already got your tickets, get on with it. Okay, what else have we got to talk about? Anything, Alex? What are you doing in the Travelodge? Have you got a gig coming up or anything like that?
I'm plotting my escape as soon as possible. That's what I'm doing.
You're knotting the sheets together, trying to get out of the window. Back to the Shires.
With the small faces lot again. So I've put down my Beatles hat and I've done my finest mod gear. And I'm a small face again for the weekend. Actually, we had Sandy Sargent, who was
Mac's wife.
There last night.
That's right. It's so wonderful.
Yeah.
Did she like it?
She did. She loved it. She's seen it a couple of times, actually. She did. She did approve. It was nice to see, it was nice to see the ball and chain again. And
yeah, because you play the part of Mac, don't you?
Yeah, I do, yeah. And all that can they hear that outside?
Yeah,
the sound of young Kingston.
All people. More dissatisfied customers hurling bricks through the Travelodge window.
It's about as far from a cruise ship as it's possible to get.
Yeah.
So when you do your Small Faces act, what do you start with? What's your opening Small Faces song?
So for anybody who isn't aware, so this is a condensed version of the musical that we toured with and did a brief West End residency. So it's basically the same running order. So it kind of runs through the Small Faces of chronologically. We start with Rolling Over, which isn't really chronological, but we go right back to You Need Loving, which obviously Led Zeppelin appropriated. What You Gonna Do, Shalalalali. We go right through to Itchy Park and Happiness Stan. And then we do a second set in this one of general 60s groovers from little-known bands such as the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and the Who.
Oh, right. What's like what? Which song?
It helped last time. Tommy Tucker, High Heel Sneakers.
Right.
That's a saucy one. Yeah.
So do you do them as if it's the Small Faces cover version? Is that how you do it?
No, we do. We kind of
You don't sing it in character.
We break the fourth wall for that.
Okay.
And we do that just as ourselves, I suppose. Still in our mod gear, but I switched from keys. I hadn't touched the keyboard in 6 months, and I have to play 2 of them at the same time to be back. So yesterday was a little bit jazz, but that's the Small Faces are about, right?
What is the Small Faces' signature song?
HQ Park, 100%.
It is it?
Because it's
the
Lazy
one.
Sunday.
No, because it's HQ Park's the one everybody knows. Like, even the thing which I found
it's not
really
All or Nothing.
I don't think
that number one record?
It was their first number one, but I think HQ Park is the one that's endured. I mean, the surprising thing for me when I first got cast, 4 years ago, is that the Small Faces have always been really important to me, because all the bands that I really loved, every single one of them cited them as an influence. So in my world, they were always prevalent. They were always there, always present somehow. But to the general public, they're not really well known at all. And this really kind of surprised me, because I thought they were the part of the general kind of populace's sort of line of information. But nobody really knows them if they're not really into music. But everybody does know HQ Park. So it's got to be their signature, really, I think.
So Mark and I were talking about signature tunes earlier this week, because I'm reading a fantastic biography of Bob Hope, which contains all kinds of revelations.
Oh, Mark Ellen's disappeared.
Oh, well, it can't be bad. Mark Ellen's disappeared.
Where's he gone?
I'm just going to keep talking until he rejoins us. Shall I do that? Is that the best policy? So Bob Hope, early on in his career at vaudeville, was part of an act, two guys kind of singing and dancing and telling jokes act. And their big breakthrough was when they got a 6-month residency dancing with a pair of Siamese twins.
What?
Yes. 6 months. Dancing with a pair of Siamese twins.
Hashtag things that wouldn't happen in 2022.
Absolutely. And so the reason that we're talking about the whole business of signature tunes is that Bob Hope's was Thanks for the Memory, which he was first introduced to when he was given it to sing in a movie in 1938. And the reason they gave it to him to sing was he was always very good at what they call list songs. So he wasn't particularly a singer, but he could remember lyrics. And, so you'd always have these songs that, like Cole Porter's You're the Tops or whatever. You're the Tops, you're the Colosseum, you're the Louvre Museum, you're the, loads and loads of examples. And Thanks for the Memory was a bit like that. So he started singing this in 1938, and it was so big so quickly that they made a movie just called Thanks for the Memory. And he carried on being his signature tune until he died in the 21st century. That's a long time with the signature tune.
It is, yeah.
And we were just thinking, what are the signature tunes? What are the songs that kind of bind the audience and the performer? Obviously Frank Sinatra, My Way, is kind of that, isn't it? That, hello, Mark Ellen's back. He's back in the room.
Mark, how you doing?
Kept talking. I kept talking.
I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened. Suddenly just flicked out. So we're back. Yeah.
You're back. We're talking about sig tunes, and I've told Alex about the Bob Hope. Thanks for the memory. And we're just trying to think of other signature tunes that have that where the tune kind of bonds the audience and the performer. In a shared history. So My Way is a classic.
My Way's good.
Queen would be Bohemian Rhapsody, surely.
Except no, not really. We Are the Champions and I Will Survive. I think it's things about...
It's an I song very often.
Okay.
I'll tell you a really good example of that, actually, which I think is it's nowhere near on that kind of level, but I think it's Ever Fallen in Love with Someone.
Buzzcocks.
Because that's one of those songs where everybody looked at that and thought, I've had that experience. and everyone kind of nods approvingly at the concept of having ever fallen in love. I think that's a great one. There was a band in 1991 called Airhead. I can remember when I was just started working.
What a good record.
Yeah, do you remember that? I was working.
Funny how the girls you fall in love with never fancy you. Funny how the ones you don't do.
Very good. That's right.
I used to play on the radio all the time. It's a brilliant record.
It's a really, really good record. And it's just one of those things that I can remember it really well. I was on Select at the time. It was the kind of indie time. And absolutely everybody connected with that. Because that's a universal experience, isn't it?
Yeah.
Those are the songs that.
But it's also things like Oasis. Presumably, "Live Forever" is the Oasis anthem.
Yeah.
Gosh, I would suggest.
What's the one? Go on.
I'd suggest it's probably "Don't Look Back in Anger." That's the one you can
maybe.
You can whip out of your back pocket in any establishment in the UK, and immediately people, without even realising it, they'll have their shirt off. I'd be really rolling it around their head.
But it's kind of songs where people feel that they're singing about themselves.
Yeah, I don't think that's true. I think that's just an anthem. I think kind of "We Are the Champions, I Will Survive." I think that's about we've all been through this experience. Yeah. And we all know what it's like, and we're taking a great deal of strength from the fact that this community have all felt the same way.
Maybe it is.
I think that's different from an anthem. An anthem is just waving a flag or a cigarette lighter, and just kind of joining in. No, I think they're things that make you feel connected. And I think Born to Run, Dave, we've talked about.
Born to Run is one.
Tramps Like Us. And Tramps Like Us. It's that idea that we do this together. All of us have been through this.
Yeah, we've all been to Bruce Springsteen shows where you look around, there's people in the 60s and 70s or whatever. So, they're driven here in a company car. Singing about tramps like
loosen their ties, reattach their tie as a headband, torn the sleeves off their jacket. Tramps Like Us. No, I think that's a real difference. But yeah, that's a great song. That thanks for the memories. Amazing, and it's still 1938, wasn't it?
1938, and he sang it for the rest of his life. It's absolutely
because there were a lot of songs that Summertime's from around then. My Baby Just Cares for Me, Blue Moon, but they don't have the same kind. They're just great songs. They're not connective, are they?
No.
I know.
So if anybody's got any suggestions for further ones, let us know.
This podcast was brought to you by The Word.